Hi, everyone. I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for tuning into one of our talks today. We are a year-round digital talk series bringing you the best creative voices across film, television, and theater. And today we're incredibly grateful to be joined by the wonderful Aaron Lazar, who is currently starring in the new Fox series, Filthy Rich. I wanted to start by asking you about stepping into this role because you actually just joined the show a week before it was filming, which didn't give you very much time, I imagine, to prep with the scripts and really develop who this character was. So how did that force you to prepare in a very quick way, very differently to the way that you usually would have a little bit more time to sit down with the scripts?
Yeah, I was on the road with the Broadway national tour of Dear Evan Hansen, playing the dad. And next thing I know, I'm leaving that tour early and I'm flying to New Orleans and we're like right into shooting. So it was fast and furious. Some of the Rev I understood, having spent a ton of time sitting in traffic in Los Angeles listening to Joel Osteen on Sirius XM. And so he was kind of in there, you know, even though I am a nice Jewish boy from New Jersey. The Rev was kind of in there. And then I just did as much research as I could, as fast as I could. I mean, thank God for YouTube. I was talking about this with a director friend of mine yesterday, just how the access that we have nowadays to behind the scenes footage and roundtable interviews with anybody everywhere doing everything is just amazing, right? So thankfully, it wasn't like back in the day. I mean, back in the day, I'd have to go to the library, you know, like I would have to have gone to the library in New Orleans and like found books and pictures and stuff like that. I remember those days. So yeah, I watched a lot of footage of preachers, ministers, from evangelical to the hip young guys to spiritual advisors of celebrities, like all that stuff, and just tried to give myself whatever I needed for the scripts as they would come in and try and catch up to everybody else in the world of the show.
Yeah. How much did you want to think about his past journey that he had taken in that religious sphere, and the fact that obviously, you know, it would have started with good intentions, but then as we start to see in the show, perhaps there's a little bit of a battle going on for power, and that has kind of taken over a little bit more. So how much did you want to think about his previous journey prior to what we see in the show, or did you really just focus on the journey that's happening in the scripts on screen?
Well, TV is a crazy, crazy world. Our showrunner once said to me, it's just like you just get thrown into the deep end, fed to the wolves, so to speak, and just go, because the scripts are coming at you sometimes a day before you start shooting. And with a new show, Filthy Rich is a brand new show. So these characters, everyone's figuring out who they are as we're making it. And so it's not like doing a play or something where the words on the page have been there for a while. Maybe they're doing some rewrites, but you're rehearsing those exact words 8 hours a day, 6 days a week before you go into previews, and then, you know, yada, yada. TV is like, they've got a script. We're going to do a table read. And then the next day you're shooting. And that's if you get to do a table read. So creating a character and the history of that character, sometimes you're doing a lot of work, and then you find out that, you know, here's a perfect example. Like in one of the episodes early on, some of the writers came to me and they're like, okay, listen, man. So the Rev might be like huffing peyote in his recording studio. So we got some lines in here. I think I say to this actor, musician, the guy who did all the music on our show, Travis Howard, was sort of my buddy on the music of the show. And I said to Travis, like, it's time for my snack, brother Corley. And I said to the writers, what does that mean? They're like, well, yeah, you're huffing peyote. That's your snack. I'm like, okay. So then I have to build this thing. I'm like, I go home and I'm like, okay, so the Rev is doing drugs. What does that mean? Where does that come from? Do all my actor homework. And I'm waiting as the season goes on for like me to become this drug addict, you know, this drugged out, strung out minister who's falling apart or something, whatever. And by episode 5 or 6, we're back in the recording studio, and I say to the guys, you know, it might be really cool. We haven't been back in the studio for a while. It might be cool if I come out and I just did some drugs or whatever it is. I mean, I had to look up huffing peyote. I don't even know what that means. But I was like, what if I was doing that? And they were like, oh, no, network kiboshed that long time ago. That's gone. That storyline's gone. So like, that's a perfect example of, you can't really build a history until the words are on the page. And the words on the page, episode to episode, especially with a show like this where there's so many twists and turns, you do what you can, right? You do what you can.
Yeah, and because you were mentioning Travis there, who's the music producer on the show, and there's multiple musical moments, especially for your character, I was really interested in kind of how that collaborative relationship worked and kind of how involved you were as he was putting together the arrangement, and then kind of how you would take that and think of it, not just in terms of a performance, but what it was telling the audience about your character as well.
Well, singing, you know, music in the Christian music world was definitely new for me. Weirdly, as fate happened, sometimes I had just seen the movie I Can Only Imagine with Dennis Quaid about like the #1 Christian pop song of all time. And I actually ended up using that song in my audition because they wanted me to sing in the audition. So I had like a little taste of that world. Travis is amazing. I mean, he's a Nashville guy and singer-songwriter, you know, producer genius. And so the creator's really specific. These guys knew what they wanted my character to be singing and why. And so it was cool because we'd go into the studio, we'd record stuff, Travis would make magic. And then if it was any of the music that I sing on the Rev set in front of live studio audience, that was sort of the ministry within the show. Recording that was fascinating because you have to kind of have you have to have the track in your ear, but then they also need to do it completely silent where you kind of, so that there's no background noise. And so the extras are all mouthing, clapping, and it's this strange coming together of how you get music to go from something that's been recorded to looking like it's being performed live. So that process was new to me, and that was fascinating. But I love it. I love making music with Travis. He's my neighbor just across the way here in LA, and we've since gone on to work on a couple of different music projects together because we just love working together.
Yeah, and I know one of those is the Lullabies album, where you've been collaborating with a lot of other Broadway actors and musicians on lullaby songs, where you did a Kickstarter. And I love that this was your first Kickstarter, and was actually just really interested in how you set about navigating that space, figuring out things, what the rewards were going to be, and how it's been a valuable tool in starting to connect with an audience for the album before you've even made it. Well,
you're awesome. Thanks for, you know, that's cool that you know about that. Yeah, it was really cool. I've got these two amazing children, these boys, 8 and 10, who were pretty scared and freaked out when coronavirus hit. And I've always been singing them to sleep with like my favorite show tunes that I just turn into lullabies. And I thought, well, maybe there's other kids and families out there that would love this music, and called up Travis, and he thought it was a cool idea. And then I just started calling up some friends and thought, well, let's go raise some money and see if this is something people want. And it is, thankfully. And we're making this album right now. We're almost done. And then we'll put it out there. But staying creative in the middle of this pandemic, what are you going to do? And one of the things we can do is make music, right? We're recording it all remotely, which is cool. And I'm working with actually the music director. Our music director for this is Austin Cook, this guy who was our music director on the national tour of Evan Hansen, and he's a genius. So we're having fun.
That's so great. And jumping back to the show, because you were mentioning, obviously, even just with the music performances, but also when there's kind of the televangelism scenes as well, there is a live studio audience of background actors. Was that a really valuable tool to you to have that energy in the room to feed off of and to really understand the space that he's in as a character?
Yeah, crucial. I mean, it was really cool. I think I think that set evolved. I think originally when they shot the pilot, he was in a church. He was in what they were trying to find, like a mega church. But then they, you know, production design, they conceived of this like virtual ministry, which is super cool. So I have this wall of massive digital screens behind me that they can turn into anything, which is super fun. And then a live studio audience of, you know, I don't know, 50, 100 people. And that was very important for me because, you know, that was my stage, and I've got plenty of experience on a stage, but it's just not the same if there's nobody there. Mm-hmm. So to have people there, to have people to interact with, I mean, one of the episodes I have to do some healing, you know, and going up to people and being able to actually have people there was really important and helped me a lot, because it was really important to me that this character is not poking fun at or making fun of Christianity or anything like that. I want him to be super believable. And I wanted this ministry, even though it's high tech and future-y, I want it to feel super accessible and real, and that people will, as if you're tuning in every week to watch this preacher. So we worked really hard on that, and having those folks there was super helpful. They were great.
Mm-hmm. And because the moments that we're seeing of that within the show are obviously kind of a snippet of a segment rather than what would be the entire thing, was there much of an opportunity to have a discussion, you know, with Tate Taylor and the rest of the creative team about what would this network be, what would the tone of it be, what would the different shows be, and how would the overall look and feel, so that you know exactly what it is that you're stepping into in those scenes?
I wish I could say there was that. There wasn't. Maybe there was I'm sure there was for those guys. But TV is fast. It's super fast. Your audience probably knows this already, but you know, when you're on a movie, you're shooting 1, maybe 2 pages a day. And on television, you're sometimes shooting 8, 10 pages a day. Different locations, blah, blah, blah. So there's not a lot of time. And so a lot of the creative conversations that the actors are just jonesing for, like that, like what would this ministry be and all that stuff, there's just not a lot of time for those. So you kind of have to, I was listening to a roundtable conversation where Tom Hanks was remembering on Captain Phillips that, you know, there was this moment in the script when his character looks out the porthole of this lifeboat, and, you know, the sun is setting perfectly in his eyes. And it's this moment where you really get to like see into the character's soul, you know, and he was like, oh, I can't wait to shoot. That's gonna be awesome. And he got to the set, and the lifeboat they were using had no porthole, right? So, you know, he could be like, well, can you guys cut a hole in this? Like, can we, but he's not going to be like that. So you work with what's there, right? And he's like, you kind of just, no matter how much you prepare, you kind of just have to show up and be the guy. So that's my job, is to sort of show up and make it feel like I had been working on that set of that ministry every day for the last 15, 20 years, even if it's literally the first day I've been on that set.
Did that carry over to the dynamic of just kind of, you know, it is such an ensemble cast, and every actor comes in with their own style and the way that they like working, how much they like to talk about something before a scene, how much they like to kind of save it for camera. You know, was that something as well where you had to just very quickly understand what everybody's working style was, because there's so many different cast members that you're interacting with? And was it a benefit as well that so many people were coming from theater as well, so had that same like work ethic and sensibility that comes with theater?
Yeah, that's a really cool question. I think that is true. I think there is a certain way, you know, that the theater, there's a muscle there of getting a show up in the theater, and there's a muscle getting a production and a show shot and TV and film. And I think you're right. I mean, that's what happens. You meet people, and in my case, like literally, hey, how you doing? Let's shoot this. Where, you know, it's, you figure it out as you go. How does this person like to work? Them figuring out how I like to work, and all of us knowing that we're all just collaborating together to make this show the best show that it can possibly be. And so it's cool. And you know, this particular ensemble of actors is just fantastic. I mean, we all Marco Polo it up to this day. Like, everybody is still in touch and friends, and just great people, super talented people, and everybody worked really, really hard to make this show great. And I think people will hopefully find that it is.
Yeah. One of the things that's really interesting about your character is that idea of public versus private persona. And we start to see two very different sides of who he is, but it still feels very cohesive throughout the space. Was that something that you kind of developed as you were playing him, and just figuring out how far he was going to go down each of those two different roads and those two different versions of himself?
You're so good. These questions are so good. Yeah, that's always a fascinating thing, right? The look into the character, like public versus private. The moments when the Rev's by himself were really, really special for me, because it is very different. Like, if it's just me at a piano, than if it's me in front of, you know, those cameras and the 50 extras and putting on that show. And so, yeah, I was constantly trying to just layer up whatever the writers were giving us about our characters. I was just constantly trying to build that into whatever work I was doing. But because I haven't seen it, I don't know how I did. So we'll have to see. But it was a blast. I mean, he's a super ambitious guy, and family is a big theme in this show. And he's not really in the family, but he like really wants to be. And if there was any history to this character there, that was sort of the fun thing, you know. Olivia Macklin plays Becky Monroe. We're siblings on the show, and she's my sister. She's married to Kim Cattrall's characters, like the heir to the throne, Corey Cott, who plays Eric Monroe. And like, so my sister's kind of married into the family, but I'm kind of like the guy, like, you know, the black sheep, like the guy on the outside who like just wants to be in there. And so I tried to use that, you know.
And do you find that the costumes and props are something that are a really valuable tool for you in terms of finding the character, even down to thinking about the suits that he wears, the shirts that he wears, the microphone on the side of your face when you're presenting? Are those aspects that really help you in terms of just like really discovering more layers and more details of your character?
Yeah, I went into it talking with Carol Cutshall, an amazing costume designer, and was like, you know, Bieber's got this really interesting spiritual advisor who's like super hip, and, you know, can we look at what he wears? And, you know, there's this guy who's the head of like this super progressive church, and he would look at what he wears and just try to find, like, I was super excited to do that. And I think the network kept just going back to like power suits. So we tried to, like, you know, find those different routes. But I think I understand why they went that way now that I have a few shirts in my closet that have a bunch of tigers on them. Like, I understand that, like, that wasn't the way to convey the power dynamic of the characters on this show. You know, that's more of like Ginger's world, like that sort of flashy, edgy kind of thing, and that we had to be powerful and a little more conservative. So it was fun finding those suits, and props were awesome. Like, if I wanted anything, like, you know, I give this monologue at one point about the wolves in us and which wolf do you feed, kind of thing. And I was like, well, it'd be really cool to have like a wolf ring, because there was a bunch of wolf imagery in the scripts and stuff. And so they went and found me, like, they brought me a box with like 6 different wolf rings in it, like, that were just awesome. So threw one of those on, had fun with that. I mean, I love that stuff. And production design was amazing. Like, if you walk around our sets, whether it's like the Rev's recording studio or Eugene's office in their country house, like, the details there, as somebody says in the script, like, somebody, I forget which episode, someone comments on, like, look at the iced tea glasses. Like, every detail in the show to create this world of the rich and powerful in New Orleans was very meticulously thought out, which is awesome.
Yeah. One of the assertions of power that I love as well in your character is just the way that he carries himself in the room. And there's very kind of like open but strong body language in terms of the television pieces that you film. And was that something that you just kind of felt out in the moment and really came from that energy in the television studio set? Or was it something that you thought about a little bit as you were building it out?
That stuff was fun and a little bit scary because you get a script and there's a piece of a song, right? Like, you know, okay, this is great. That whenever they put the song in the script, it's in italics. So I'm like, okay, I'm singing here. And then it just goes into another scene. And so I made the mistake once of just learning that little piece of what was in the script, right? So like 8 lines of the song and following the stage directions, like the Rev, you know, goes out into the crowd, sings to somebody, and here's this. And I show up, and the director would go like, okay, so we're going to do the whole song, and you're going to be healing people in the song. And it's like, well, I actually have to prepare that. Like, to make that believable, I got to go, like, thankfully I've got enough background in learning music that I'm quick. But like, B, healing people is not like you just walk up to somebody and pull that out of a hat. Like, you got to work on that. I do. I'm not cool with, you know, stepping into the shoes of religion and faith and the culture and the traditions of all that and like faking it, looking like a hack. Like, no way. So that was cramming every second I could in between, you know, back to my trailer and working stuff out. So that was terrifying sometimes. And I did see some of that footage and that came out really, really well, like, thankfully. But it was a little bit like, on the spot, am I going to do that? And so after that, I just made sure that like I had worked out and choreographed or had ideas for choreography for how I could fill the space, take that stage and perform that number, not knowing how much of the song we were going to use or what they needed from me, but that I was ready to go with all of it, which was super fun and cool. And again, I was like, I didn't know, was there going to be a choreographer there? Is somebody going to actually stage this number? Because that's what happens in the theater, right? They kind of are like, what do you want to do with it? But then there's like somebody there who's like, but with this, it was just all me. It was just like, do your thing. And I was like, okay.
That's amazing. One of the other things that I really love about the show overall is the tone that it's found and that way of finding that sense of humor and kind of, like you said, but not poking fun at religion, but really kind of finding the humor through the characters. Was that something that the creative team helped each of you find what that tone was going to be, or did it really just come through in the scripts naturally?
It definitely comes through the scripts. The writers are so good. I mean, you know, Tate and Abe, so good, so specific. And I think I responded to it very quickly. I mean, I think when you're, as an actor, you get a script and you read it and you kind of, there's magic time when you just kind of get it. And that's usually a credit to how great the writing is. So I think they wrote the tone of this world really well.
Yeah.
Hi, Kitty. And yeah, you kind of go and watch other actors working and go like, am I in the right world? Because they had shot the pilot before. They knew each other. You know what I mean? I was the new guy. So I wanted to make sure I was able to, you know, step into the game wherever they were and not play crazy past.
And in terms of the setting of the show, with it taking place in the South, it's not just something where that happens to be the location of the show. That really feeds into the identity of the overall series, of the tone of it, and to the characters. So were there details that you pulled into your character from understanding, you know, the locale and the location and the way that that was seeping into everything in that way?
Yeah, I kind of made the choice that the Rev is not from Louisiana. that he was like a Texas preacher and you know, kind of grew up. And so my backstory was there. So I just kind of did a little bit of that. And then with shooting in New Orleans, it was cool. So we got to live and breathe that city while we were there. I had spent some time there before, so it didn't feel completely foreign, which was cool. That stuff kind of all came together really gracefully and pretty easily, which was nice.
That's so great. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time to dive into talking about your character and the show. And I hope that everyone watching this will immediately dive into the show. It's such a great binge watch. And I think especially the type of television that's so wonderful to watch and dive into right now. So thank you so much, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thank you. It was great talking with you.